Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this program. This afternoon, I would like to discuss the interview that Dara B. Blessed Mhlanga had with Nelson Chamisa. Because in that interview, many issues have been raised, which I think Zimbabweans should focus on. And I think one of the reasons why we are a failed state is that we have failed to hold our leaders to account. And in this interview, that is one of the issues that come to the fore. Many of the people out there still believe and trust Chamisa, as he will himself confirm in this interview, which I'll be playing snippets of during this hour. We've got a whole hour to discuss this issue. I'll start with the first item, which is Chamisa saying that Zimbabwe belongs to all of us, and that when the time comes, we will bring about meaningful change. I find that shocking, to say the least. Is he trying to suggest here that MDC-CCC have failed to implement the democratic reforms all these last 26 years they've been in power because it was not the right time? The people have suffered all these years and they believed that Chamisa and company will implement the democratic reforms, only to be disappointed again and again. And now they are to be told that it was because it was not the right time. I find that to be an insult. Of course it was the right time. Chamisa and company and his MDC friends had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms during the 2008 to 2013, which would have ended the ZANU-PF dictatorship. They failed to do so because they sold out. And therefore, then to suggest that somehow it was not the right time is an insult. And I think the people of Zimbabwe should start taking these politicians like Chamisa, to task over issues like that. Welcome to the program, Ben.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining. I have to agree with you. It is a kind of an insult, especially to our intelligence. This is a man before the 2023 elections that stood up in front of thousands of people that were gathering at his rally and declared to them and promised them that it is done even in heaven and on earth. He congratulated everybody to say, we have won. God has answered our prayers. This is what he said. And now to turn back and say it wasn't the right time. It's either, taking people as fools, insulting God himself. It's It's so discouraging and disheartening, and it actually angers to those that still have free will, that this man could stand up and lie using the name of God just because he knows Zimbabweans are very, spiritual, and Christianity is one of our fundamental beliefs, you know, and traditions in Zimbabwe. I think, for far too long, people like Chamisa have, you know, easily taken advantage and manipulated the people, and have never been held accountable to their actions and their words.
I'd like to encourage people out there that you can join us and express your views as well. Use the link at the bottom of your screen there, and would like to hear your views on this issue. But to come back to the video clip, those of you who would like to listen to Darabi's interview, it's available on YouTube. If you search for the title on YouTube at the bottom of your screen there, you should be able to listen to the interview for yourself. I'll play snippets of this interview as we go through the afternoon. Here's the beginning of it.
President, the last time you held a press conference, you announced that you wanted 180 days to be able to give the people of Zimbabwe direction as to where they're going. They're waiting for that 180 days have come and gone. What is your word to them?
That direction has already been given. We have sent signals out into the country. Across the country, people know what is expected of them. We've said that the citizens' movement must be in action. There has to be the unit of citizens. And I'm glad to say that across the country, and now I'm in the UK, I'm coming here to galvanize the momentum, but also to invite citizens in the diaspora to be part of this process and to make sure that we reignite and energize the base for the future. So it's not just about 180 days. People stick to that limit. I said within, and I've since done a lot across the whole country. I've been meeting with people in communities, traditional leaders, opinion leaders, business leaders, and of course, citizens leaders in various spectrums. Our point persons who are in the different regions in the country. They know what is expected of them. It's not a Chamisa issue. It's not an individual issue. It's about all of us.
Is this a secret movement that you are dealing with? Because you say the people know, but you have not made anything public. Are you running?
It's not about Nelson Chamisa, like I say. It's the citizens. And there are meetings that are happening across the whole country by the citizens. It can't be secret if it is being done across the whole country. Because a secret thing cannot be done openly. There has been an open conversation across the whole country. But this is about the citizens of Zimbabwe. It cannot be about Nelson. It cannot be about an individual. Let it be done by the people. I keep saying to people of Zimbabwe, let's each play a role. Building a nation is never a solo act. Building a nation is a team effort, it's a collective effort. It's you, it's me, all of us. I'm saying, I'm ready to play my part, be ready to play yours. And it takes two to tango. Let's tango. I can't tango alone. Nobody can tango alone. That has been my message.
You've been accused of selling out to ZANU-PF. In fact, the accusation is that you were complicit in the passing of the Constitutional Amendment Act number 3, and that all your interventions have been to fight those who have been fighting against its enactment.
Who has been fighting against its enactment? And to what extent did they succeed? And how have I fought them? So you must also be very clear that at times, don't listen too much to failed people would sell you their failed and soiled propaganda about Nelson Chamisa, who has fought Mnangagwa and succeeded better than I have done. I defeated Mnangagwa twice, in 2018, courtesy of the citizens, and 2023. And nobody has done that. Nobody has that record.
Well. We keep going round and round in circles here. Chamisa claims that he has defeated Mnangagwa in 2018 and then again in 2023. We have to define what this victory means. You had told and repeatedly that the election process without reforms, ZANU-PF will rig the elections. And rigging the elections, part of rigging the elections means they can declare Mnangagwa as being the winner of a process that is flawed. Outsiders cannot come in and say who has won because the process is flawed. And if you agree to participate in the flawed process, yes, you can come out and say, no, I'm the one who won it. But no one else can say anything about it because they've told you the process is flawed. We can't judge this process. And if you insist in participating, you must also accept the consequences of your participation. I don't think that is rocket science. The problem we have had with people like Chamisa is that they want to have their cake and keep it too. You can't have it both ways. If you want outsiders to sit in judgment of the process, then you've got to accept the process must follow set out rules. They must be free, fair, and credible. And the outsiders, those who monitor the election, must be able to say, yes, the process was free, fair, transparent, and credible. But if it's not, all they can tell you is that the process was flawed. And for you then to turn around and say, oh no, I still want the flawed process and you should recognize me as the winner. It's nonsensical. They will tell you, no, we told you, as long as the process is flawed, we cannot come up with who is the winner and who is the loser. Because the process is flawed. And yet we keep having this nonsensical claim by Chamisa and company that I've won the elections. I've defeated Mnangagwa twice in 2018 and 2023. That is nonsense. The process was flawed. Mnangagwa claims that he is the winner, and you claim you are the winner. And if the process is flawed, neither of you are making any sense. And since Mnangagwa has the backing of the ZEC officials, whom you have accepted, have a meaningful say in who is the winner, because you are accepted to participate in the process, everybody's got to accept whatever ZEC says. I think this point has got to be made so many times, and it's so disappointing that leaders like Chamisa are so selective. When it suits them, they accept that the process is flawed. And then the next breath, because it suits them as well, they want to claim that they won the elections. I have defeated Mnangagwa on 2 different occasions. No one else has done so. You participated in a flawed process, which all election observers of any substance have condemned as flawed. And per se, no one can say who was the winner or who was the loser. If the process is flawed, they cannot judge. And if you participate in a flawed process, you have got to accept the results of the biased judge, i.e. ZEC. I think that is annoying. What is so infuriating is that Chamisa keeps insisting he can win rigged elections. And when he has lost them, he's the first one to say, oh, ZANU-PF rigged. But when it suits him, he will turn around and say, oh, I want those elections. This is just nonsense. This is so childish. The people of Zimbabwe must really wake up to this nonsense and reject it for what it is.
Chamisa went into the 2018 election. I think that was the first one he went in as presidential candidate. And after those elections, he claimed that the elections were rigged and so forth. Now, in 2023, he stood up and said that he was going to win big. He had put in measures to stop ZANU-PF from rigging those elections. But he wasn't kind enough to tell what were the measures. Because from what we got from the observer missions and what we had from previous elections before that, the conditions were still exactly the same, if not worse. We didn't have any verified voters roll in 2018. We didn't have any verified voters roll in 2023. Same condition. We didn't have, we had a delimitation exercise that was so dubious and so outrageous. It just made the situation look even worse or impossible. Now, when you have a deteriorating environment, democratic environment like that, and then you say or you claim that you have fixed it, and on the ground, it speaks contrary to that. It's either somebody is lying or somebody knows they are doing it for selfish gains. And this is why you see he says, I won the election. He claims his victory and not the people's victory. When there's a problem, the problem is all ours. When there is victory, we speak about me. These are the type of people that we have. Selfish.
We have got a problem. I think the people of Zimbabwe have got to realize this reality. As long as we have got a political system that cannot be trusted to function, that disrespects the rule of law, we will always have a problem. We have to ask people like Chamisa whether they respect the rule of law. They know what democracy is about. Because until you accept it, you end up having this meaningless charade, where 1 minute you participate, the next minute you deny participating, and even accuse those before you of conniving. This is the cycle we have had. I've said on this platform that people should remember that MDC guys, Nelson Chamisa and company, were elected by the people of Zimbabwe for one very specific purpose: to implement the democratic reforms necessary to end this ZANU-PF dictatorship. That was the number one purpose. MDC, the party, the name itself stands for Movement for Democratic Change. MDC. They were responding to the people's needs. People had realized, the people of Zimbabwe had realized that as long as we have got ZANU-PF in power and is able to blatantly rig the elections, there will be no meaningful change in the country. And hence the reason why the party said the people said we needed to implement these democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. And Morgan Tsvangirai and his friends launched their party in 1999 in response to that need. We, the Movement for Democratic Change, will bring about the democratic changes that the nation needs to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The question that has got to be asked, therefore, is in 26 years, what democratic changes have you brought about? Nelson Chamisa and company must answer that question. And in this case here, you have failed to implement even one reform, even when you had the golden opportunity to do so during the GNU. And ever since the GNU, they have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that ZANU-PF was rigging the process. And they have admitted it themselves. But they've continued to participate out of greed. This is the reality that the people of Zimbabwe must accept. And they should not be conned and fooled by the likes of Chamisa making these ridiculous claims. I have defeated Mnangagwa on 2 different occasions. You were supposed to stop him rigging the elections. You accept that Mnangagwa is in power today because he was able to rig the elections. The question you must answer then is, why have you been participating and in some cases insisting in participating in flawed elections only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy? That is the question that we've often asked on this program. And we've often quoted David Coulthard's admission that the opposition have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, and knowing fully well that participating will give ZANU-PF legitimacy. And this is where Chamisa and company must be held to account. And people should not be fooled by these meaningless claims, endless claims, that whenever it suits them, you will claim that he won the 2018 elections and then the 2023 elections. Such claims should be followed with a simple question. If you won, why did you not assume office? It's because the system was rigged. ZANU-PF was able to rig the process. Nobody could say who won. All the election observers have told you the process is so flawed, we cannot tell who is the loser and who is the winner. Because you need a clean process to come up with that judgment. Your claim that you won 2 million votes, Mnangagwa claims that he won 2.2 million votes. The system is flawed. You cannot deny that the system is flawed. You cannot deny that you participated in a flawed process. You have got to accept, therefore, ZEC's result. That is the argument that we have said on this platform and must be said over and over again.
You know, I've always said ZANU-PF and Triple C MDC are more or less similar. I mean, we have seen Mnangagwa and his crew distance themselves or say that they are better than Mugabe and his crew, yet they were part and parcel of Mugabe. Now here is Chamisa saying he has done better than anybody else that has opposed ZANU-PF. You know, these are the kind of people that we have. You know, he goes there and say, you know, this is not a one-man fight. It is a fight for all of us. I mean, we all know that already. Since the formation of MDC, Triple C, the people of Zimbabwe have sacrificed a lot on the agreement that they would deliver the much needed change. They have always sacrificed. Whatever you have said, they have always done, including in participating in rigged elections in their millions. They have always done that. Now the question is, the people are doing what you are saying. And then what you are saying or promising them, you have never delivered. We will win big. We have put in measures to stop ZANU-PF from rigging. This time they cannot rig. God is in it. And no delivery whatsoever. You know, these are some guys or some characters that really have never been held accountable for what they say and their actions. They simply just think they can say something and get away with it. He has to be answerable to say, you promised this, you declared by God's name, even, that you were going to win this. What happened? Did God fail? Did you fail? Because you cannot then stand up and say, I've done marvelous. I'm the best opposition that has ever been there. Measuring to who? When you've been in all. It's like ZANU-PF. Mnangagwa says, I'm better. The second dispensation is better than anybody else. Compared to who when you were in both? Zimbabweans need to hold these leaders accountable. Otherwise, they will roughshod us altogether. They are of the same character, they share same similarities and attributes, where they feel that, you know, they can enjoy the current situation where there's very little to no accountability from the people. We have to change that.
Well, we can listen to more of the interview with Darabi.
So how do they then come and say they are better? And the men I defeated, and the man who has taken everything away from me, is the man I've sold out. But of course, people can say whatever they want to say. My record speaks for itself. That's why people have confidence in us. They know that we are consistent. For the 3 decades I've been in this fight and in the trenches, I've never taken a cent of ZANU PF. ZANU hajirwe musaga se sugar. You know, you must understand that when ZANU bribes you, they will advertise you. And those who have taken money from ZANU are known. But for me to be accused when I have scars and wounds because of this tyranny and dictatorship is regrettable. But of course, it comes from my detractors who have never supported us. So yes, they will always say that because they hope that they will detach us from the people.
That must be challenged with unwavering resolve. We cannot pretend that MDC Triple C leaders are clean. This is absolutely ridiculous. During the GNU, when MDC leaders had their best chance to implement the democratic reforms, there can be no doubt that Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office, the E-Class Mercedes-Benz, the very generous salaries and allowances, the $4 million US dollar house for Morgan Tsvangirai himself. There is no doubt that whilst the MDC leaders enjoyed the trappings of high office, while they had their snouts in the feeding trough, they forgot about the reforms. Because credit where credit is due, SADC leaders, notably Minister Lindiwe Zulu of South Africa, reminded the MDC leaders repeatedly that they must implement the democratic reforms. They failed to implement even one. Some of the ZANU-PF cronies boasted that MDC leaders have given up on reforms. Mazwane MDC adziza kuchikanyerere. They boasted when they were asked why MDC leaders were not implementing reforms. We have to get to the bottom of this. Is it true that MDC leaders failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU when they had the best chance to do so? The answer is yes, they did. They did sell out. Here is somebody who has given additional information on MDC leaders selling out during the GNU. They were given farms.
Basi likafira msango munhu asina kwaari kuenda mubhazi mumu anofara kuti ndo patopumba pake nditori nevamwe vangu pana
Tiribo.
munhu anorwadziwa nekurara musango munhu ane kumba
Taibadana kumba kwangu.
but amana kumba kugombezi rangu riya mana so but munhu asina imba hatete kurara musango. So opposition inomeka sure kuti vanhu vaya vawane minda. But may he so rest in peace vatsvangirai prazi ravo vanga vainaro Chamisa anaro
ane family
kana azoramba ndoenda newe
riri kupi
ane famu
ribi
I know madress emunhu anonetsa kuti focha but anaro ndichakudza off camera.
Okay.
Ane mine ane makaseo.
Yeah.
Yes. Biti ane prazi hauna kumboona here picture yabiti achitenga mombe kuna Temba Mliswa dzekuisa kuprazi. One of the biggest beef producers in the Matabeleland region, the Washman Ngwe.
Okay.
Yes, ane prazi ana utenga beneficiary land reform. But what they did is to discourage their people from acquiring farms because vaiza kuti munhu akaona something chapiwa nehurumende achapikisa.
Are you for real, Mr. Kanishai?
Nomubvunza Washman Ngwe kuti haasi kuita beef here, producer beef here paprasi. Tonyaya ndanetsana upo ching'ono gore rere. Handiti kuti stand ya upo ching'ono standard ine painogumira. But vakatotaura nehurumende nemasabhuku ikaextendwa because aita god.
There is no rational explanation why MDC leaders failed to implement even one token democratic reform during the GNU of 2008 to 2013, when they had the golden opportunity to do so. Other than that, they sold out. Why some people have found this reality so difficult to swallow beggars belief, because it has allowed the opposition leaders to cheat the nation. There is no doubt that opposition leaders, MDC CCC leaders, have been ZANU-PF Team B, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy, for a share of the spoils of power. And we as a nation have got to reconcile ourselves to that reality. Because like I said at the beginning, that the MDC, the Movement for Democratic Change, was formed and the people embraced them on the understanding they would implement the necessary democratic reforms to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. 26 years later, we failed to stop ZANU-PF rigging elections. And we have to ask ourselves why. And the reason is clearly there. The MDC leaders sold out. We cannot pretend that we can still count and trust the MDC CCC leaders to implement the necessary democratic changes to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship when they've clearly sold out. That we cannot run away from. That is the elephant in the room. And people have got to swallow it, to deal with it, because until we do, Zimbabwe is not going anywhere.
You know, the similarities between Emerson Mnangagwa and Chamisa are so obvious. You know, every time you push them for any form of accountability, the first thing they say is our detractors. You know, I remember, Mnangagwa being asked about, what the SADC observer mission says vavengi vedu, they are saying kuti, our election process didn't work, or didn't go, the constitutional way, and he was quick to rubbish them. Now Chamisa is being asked for any form, accountability in the interview. He uses the same thing, detractors. See, this is the problem where we have something very, very wrong with our politics in Zimbabwe. If you're in ZANU PF and you ask for accountability from ZANU PF, they'll tell you that you're a puppet of the West. Mtengesi. Then when you go to the opposition, they'll tell you that, you are a Shigananda, you are, Faz, and so forth. So, either way, you are not going to get any form of answers or accountability from both political, divides. That is the kind of individuals that we want to have, the keys to the highest office in the land. It really worries me when you are finding two people, us having to choose between two very, very, deadly and vicious snakes. Either way, we are going to die. You cannot aspire to say, once I get rid of Mnangagwa, I'm going to put Chamisa, when you can clearly see that they are just the same thing. They are basically talking the same language, that you will never be able to ask me and I will never be answerable to you. I will give you what I give you, and that is it. If you don't want that, I will tell and I will use the word that you are a detractor. We've got a serious problem. This is why I always continue to say, unless we fix our political system entirely, maybe we need to overhaul it, or maybe just to get a brand new thing altogether. This we cannot use. We have to get to an agreement that our political system, both the opposition and both the the ruling, is utterly useless and it's rubbish. They are just the same, the same individuals, same operation. Everything is just the same. We are in serious trouble with this gentleman right here.
I'll play a few more minutes of the same video clip.
But we're not in people's minds or people's lips. We are in people's hearts. We can't be taken away from the people's hearts.
Some people say that you should have joined hands with the late Blessed Geza when he spoke about street protests.
Who
But
should have joined hands with the other? Geza should have joined hands with me, because we've been in these trenches. So Geza was saying something. He came to join us. It's not as if Geza is inviting us to something. But again, you listen to people who are quislings and counter-revolutionaries, who have nothing but to be the opposition to the opposition. They hope that in their propaganda, there will be the alternative to the alternative. But I tell you what, genuineness cannot be manufactured or engineered. It comes from the heart, and we have exuded the same. And that's why people trust and believe in us.
you keep saying people trust you. How do you know that people trust you now?
2 million votes did not come from conjecture. They voted, and there's not been a vote to invalidate that. Until there's another vote, I would then say people don't trust us.
We're coming back to the same argument. I got 2 million votes. This is the 2 million votes of people who had believed that Chamisa had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, that Triple C was going to win the elections, the 2023 elections. The men who had even invoked the name of God in pushing that argument.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
The 2 million believed that. And these are the same 2 million he's boasting about now. We cannot run away from the fact that those 2 million are, to say the least, naive, gullible, and easily conned. Because those people, this is not the first time they've been conned. In 2018, Chamisa told those same followers that that MDC alliance has stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. He was lying. And yet those people believed him. We cannot run away from the political reality that we have got an extremely ignorant, naive, and gullible electorate out there. The ancient Greeks were right. They said democracy, and they are the ones who gave humanity democracy as a system of government. A government of the people, by the people, for the people. But they also were smart enough to say those said people must be educated, knowledgeable, objective, if they are going to carry out their secret duty of holding the leaders to account. An electorate that will believe an idiotic lie like I have plugged all the vote rigging loopholes is not an educated, knowledgeable, and diligent electorate. It is the worst kind of electorate you would have if you want a healthy and functioning democracy. And that's what we have. Chamisa is only taking advantage of that naive, ignorant, and gullible electorate. And he's now throwing it right into our faces. I got 2 million votes. People who I conned to participate in the flawed elections only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy. We as a nation have got a serious challenge. As long as we have got an electorate that can easily be conned, not only by people like Chamisa, but in ZANU-PF the same thing. There is no doubt that in passing this recent Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, there are many people out there who were conned by Mnangagwa into believing that that Constitutional Amendment Bill will benefit them, who were conned to believe that Mnangagwa will deliver Vision 2030. The economy is in a mess. We've said this repeatedly, and they can see it for themselves. Basic services, the roads, are in a deplorable state. Healthcare has all but collapsed. And yet those people still believe Mnangagwa when he told them that he's going to deliver Vision 2030, turn Zimbabwe into a third and upper middle income nation in 4 years' time. That is going to increase the GDP per capita, which is at present sitting at about 2,000 US dollars, to increase it threefold to 6,000 in 4 years. And yet there is no sign whatsoever of that economic growth. If anything, ever since Mnangagwa took over, corruption has become rampant. And there is no nation on earth that has prospered as a result of corruption. And yet, hundreds of thousands of people out there have believed it and have backed this constitutional amendment bill number 3, believing that that will help Mnangagwa stay in power and so he can deliver this economic prosperity. We have a problem. We have an extremely naive, ignorant, and gullible electorate out there. And both ZANU-PF and Chamisa have exploited that weakness for their own selfish ends. That is a political reality that the people of Zimbabwe must accept and deal with.
For me, what is very disappointing is that a lot of people out there cannot see the similarities between Mnangagwa, ZANU-PF, Chamisa, and Triple C. I think that is the most disappointing thing, because it's clear as daylight. I mean, here is somebody that stands up and says, I got 2 million votes. And he still does not realize that even his support to this day has since dwindled. People are unhappy with what he did, where he promised, didn't deliver. And after he had seen he didn't deliver, he since decided to give himself a break and not be held accountable or answerable to his actions and his speeches. It's the same thing with ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF still think that, you're talking of Vision 2030. They still believe they can do it. Many people out there believe ZANU-PF is on course to deliver it, but fail to see that there is not even a foundation that has been laid to achieve such a thing. I mean, I'll give you an example. Chamisa used to be the most popular man in Zimbabwe. Right now, he's no longer. Those are just facts that show that your support has been falling. But if you still maintain, just like ZANU-PF, just like Mnangagwa, who claims I'm a constitutionalist, and yet everything shows contrary to that. What really worries me is that, you were speaking about many Zimbabweans are so naive, so gullible, and they cannot see beyond their nose. These are symptoms of people that are delusional, people that are so selfish, self-centered, that you cannot afford to give the keys of the highest office in Zimbabwe to them. You cannot afford to say you are fighting for democracy and giving these clowns, the office, the highest office in the land. I mean, if you cannot see, it becomes very difficult. This is why, democracy sometimes can be so difficult, especially when you have an overwhelming number of people that do not even understand the fundamentals required for a country to be a democratic nation. If you do not know what are the prerequisites of democracy, it's a lost cause. We have to be diligent in our processes. We have to be diligent in having our leadership accountable. The first question that you should be asking to this gentleman, Nelson Chamisa, is, you promised that you had put stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF. You said it. Why did you not deliver? You cannot say that, this movement is not a one-man thing. The people have always sacrificed. In an interview, a lecture with Professor Mandaza, where he described that during the 2008 runoff, over 300 people were killed. Many others had their limbs, hands, and body parts chopped off. Only to see when MDC went into the GNU, they completely forgot about them. Not even a word about them. They didn't even look about the welfare of their families that had lost their husbands, the welfare of the families that they had lost their mothers, that had lost their children as breadwinners. They never spoke about them. And these are the same people that we are saying, let us forgive, let us go back, let us unite together. You unite for what? When you do not care about for us. These are the questions that should be asked. Not all these useless donkey questions that really do not matter. The people of Zimbabwe have sacrificed, have lost loved ones on the context and belief that MDC, CCC were going to implement the democratic reforms necessary to cleanse our political environment. That is what we need. The cleansing of our deteriorating, stench-filled political environment. That is the number one thing what we must be fighting. Forget about leadership for now. Forget about who's going to be the next president. Whoever is going to be the next president and inherits this one, whether it be Chamisa, will surely and most definitely turn out to be ZANU-PF again. We'll have even a bigger problem because he's even younger and will want to continue until into his hundreds, just like his predecessor. We've got to wake up to those realities. We have to do our own soul searching before we can even start going to tackle the big things. Zimbabweans need to invest in the education of democracy. What is democracy? What does democracy require of us? then we can start moving forward.
I'd like to bring up an issue that I've brought up in the past, that even some of those nations that are democratic, that one can consider to be a healthy and functioning democracy, they have sometimes made mistakes. Democracy is not a guarantee of good governance. And America, I believe, in electing President Donald Trump, are learning that the hard way. Because Donald Trump has ended up having the same trends, personality qualities, and poor leadership, lack of vision that we have seen in our leaders in Zimbabwe and in Africa in general. To those of you who have not been following the goings on regarding this war in Iran, here is a video clip that I think sums it up, what is really happening there.
That just means it's a wash, that both sides are beating up on the other side and neither side has an advantage. But I think the Iranians have an advantage in this tit for tat set of exchanges. So what do we do to win this war? Again, you want to remember that the Iranians are tough hombres. We are up against formidable adversaries, number one. Number two, strategic bombing doesn't work. Number two, a blockade doesn't work. Number three, we have no land option. And number four, tit for tat is not going to work. All of this tells you we are playing a losing hand. And by the way, this is why President Trump signed the memorandum of standing on June 17th. As I said before, that was a surrender document. Why? Because the Iranians had won the war. He then decided he was unsatisfied with the memorandum of understanding, and he was going to figure out some sort of clever way to obviate it, to win, to get a better deal, whatever. And he's now engaged in this tit for tat strategy. He's reinstated the blockade, but I do not see how this is going to lead to a success for President Trump. And he's ultimately going to have to reach a deal with Iran where Iran wins.
Professor Mearsheimer, yeah, maybe we can get into some details about what exactly gives Iran the advantage here in this newest iteration of the United States' attempt to defeat Iran through war. Because there are some who watch this program, others I've seen comment, talk about their concerns about Iran's approach and some concerns even that they've lost leverage. But I'm curious on what you see as Iran's advantage here in lieu of these concerns I've been seeing and even receiving messages about.
Well, I've long argued that the longer the war goes on, the better off Iran is. If you're talking about the balance of coercive leverage, the longer the strait is closed and the less oil that gets out of the Middle East, the more damage that does to the world economy, the more damage it does to the American economy and to President Trump's political fortunes. And he's going to reach a point at some time where he's going to reach a point where he has to reach an agreement. This is what happened back on June 17th. Remember, President Trump said, I signed the memorandum of understanding because I thought if I didn't, we would face, and these were his words, an economic catastrophe. That's what he said. And he also said explicitly that he didn't want to be Herbert Hoover. He said that in the context of signing the June 17th agreement. Well, that the basic dynamic that led him to sign the memorandum of understanding and say those things still applies. So all that's to say, he's going to have to reach some sort of agreement with the Iranians sooner rather than later, because the economic consequences of doing so would be disastrous. And that would be especially true if he ups the ante next week and goes after Iranian power plants, and then the Iranians, working with the Houthis, shut down the Red Sea. This would be disastrous, right? So Trump is going to have to cut a deal. There's just no way around that. He has no way of winning. What's the leverage that Trump has? The leverage is that he can do great damage over time to the Iranian economy. I think there's no question he can do real damage. But the point is that the Iranians have been suffering enormously under American sanctions, and they've been suffering enormously in this war.
I'll stop it there. I think the most important thing to remember here is that as much as President Trump went into this war believing that it was going to be a quick and easy victory, it has turned out to be the exact opposite. The only beauty with a healthy and functioning democracy like America is that President Trump, first of all, is facing the midterm elections in November. And with the approval rating of the American electorate disapproving of him, the chances are that the Republicans are going to suffer in that midterm elections. And he himself, in 2 years' time, will face the same American electorate, and they will put him out. No if, no but. That is the beauty of a healthy and functioning democracy. Yes, you make mistakes. Yes, you elect the wrong leaders, but you're willing to learn from your mistakes and to put it right. The same cannot be said about Zimbabwe. The nation has been stuck with this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF dictatorship for 46 years and counting. And it must be said, the last 26 years of that, ZANU-PF has managed to stay in power with the connivance of the MDC, CCC leaders. That is a political reality that the people of Zimbabwe must admit and deal with. We do not have an educated electorate. We have an incredibly naive and gullible electorate that has been conned to participate in flawed elections time and time again on the basis of idiotic lies. That is the political reality that we are facing in Zimbabwe. Ben, do you want to give your concluding remarks?
I think the worst part that you could ever have is self-centered leaders egocentric leaders. You have on one hand Donald Trump, who went on to start a war with Iran. And then Iran retaliated and closed the Strait of Hormuz. And they managed to sign an agreement to get that strait opened. And Donald Trump expects everybody to be happy that he opened the strait, a strait that he had closed. Then on the other hand, you have ZANU-PF, who believe that the first dispensation, which included the current second dispensation as well, believe that they had no hand in the destroying of the economy of Zimbabwe since 1980. A jewel that had been, expected to reach the heights of Malaysia, Singapore. They don't believe it was their fault, though they are part and parcel of the scandals and the gross mismanagement that happened whilst they were there in government with Mugabe. And now that they have built, a trababalas, they have paved a few roads, they expect everybody to thank them for that. Then now you have your opposition, the Chamisa clan, who believe that they have done exceedingly well compared to others. Though they've all lost whatever they were meant to gain, but they say they lost it better, which is something that Zimbabweans should be grateful for. Now, these three groups of people believe that they have done immensely well and that the world is indebted to them for what they have done, for the atrocities that they have done. We should be grateful. Yet you cannot see any or touch the evidence that shows that they have done something positive for the world or to the world. And you are right to say, with these three classes or three groups that I have mentioned, one enjoys a democracy where they can easily say, hey, we have had enough of your nonsense. I think it's time we parted ways. And they can boot him out. America enjoys that type of democracy. Now in Zimbabwe, on the other hand, we claim we have democracy, but nothing of the sort ever existed. So we find ourselves stuck with these maniacs who will kill and expect us to be thankful for that, who will destroy and expect us to be thankful, who will loot the coffers dry and expect us to be thankful for. But we can fix this problem as Zimbabweans together. And I mentioned before, we need to do ourselves a favor by educating ourselves, by learning the true meaning and understanding of democracy. What is democracy? What must we do to be a democratic nation? And what must we do to sustain that democracy once we have achieved it? Then we are starting to fix something that nobody can take away from us for decades and generations to come. Because now we have empowered ourselves with that knowledge that we can also empower our children and their children. Then they don't make the same mistakes that we have made. Otherwise, if we fail to do that, the whole entire nation, including the future to come, will meet the same fate that we are meeting right now. Think about it.
I'd like to give the last say to an interview that Chamisa gave while he was here in UK last time. At the present moment, this interview was carried out with Darabi here in the UK. But when he visited last time, he gave an interview with BBC. Here is the interview.
ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Akasangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
I would like to remind the people of Zimbabwe what I've said on many, many occasions on this platform. The MDC, CCC leaders were elected by the people of Zimbabwe on the understanding that they will implement the necessary democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. That was the number one task. And these guys have been on the political stage the last 26 years. ZANU-PF has continued to blatantly rig elections in those 26 years. A few weeks ago, Mnangagwa signed this Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, giving himself and his ZANU-PF thugs even more dictatorial powers. Precisely because MDC CCC leaders have failed to implement reforms. Not even one token reform in 26 years, including the 5 years in the GNU. We have a problem. And the problem is us, the electorate. In 26 years, we should have seen that MDC leaders have sold out. We failed to do so. Some of us can tell you that even telling people that Chamisa lied to them in the 2023 elections, just getting people to admit that Chamisa lied has become a serious problem. Some people cannot get their heads around that political reality that yes, Chamisa lied to them and conned them to participate in a flawed process giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. If you are that ignorant, that naive, that gullible, you should not be asking why Zimbabwe is a failed state. Millions of people believed Chamisa, as Chamisa himself is proud to boast about. 2 million voted for me in 2023. What he doesn't say, of course, is that these are the same people who believed his idiotic lie that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes. As long as Zimbabwe has such a big pool of ignorant, naive, and gullible people who cannot believe that Chamisa is a liar and a con man, Zimbabwe is never going to get out of this mess. The BBC reporter there picked on one issue and showed Chamisa that he is, for who he is, a liar. Zimbabweans have failed to take leaders like Chamisa to task for the last 26 years. That speaks volumes. The interview we were referring to there, like I said, was conducted here in UK. People in the diaspora. Some of those people have lived in the UK for 10 years or more. They've seen how the democratic process works. And many of them have had the opportunity to ask Chamisa the pertinent questions while he was here. I don't have to speculate how many actually asked him even one pertinent question. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. Democracy works if the people are diligent in their secret duty of holding leaders to account. And if you can't even hold Chamisa to account for blatantly lying to the people about plugging vote rigging loopholes, knowing fully well that that was a lie and that participating will only give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship, then you should not even have the vote. You should not have the right to vote. And yet millions of us out there do have that right. Like it or not, but the truth of the matter is universal suffrage, which should be a blessing, has been a curse to Zimbabwe. And even some of our intellectuals have become a curse to the nation. What more of my uncle and my aunt in the rural backwaters? They don't know about democracy. They don't know about what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. If those with university qualifications, professional, qualified people, we have lived in a healthy and functioning democratic nation, don't even know what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections, don't even have the guts to say to Chamisa, you lied to the people. You conned them to participate in a flawed process. How can I expect my aunt and my uncle in the rural backwaters to do any better? That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.